the question of the animus imponentus. So in other words, we have, and what I'm dealing with here, of course, because we're dealing with the Westminster Assembly and its work in a very focused way, is we're dealing with what you might call in law original intent. What did they mean? What were they saying? But you have not only the question of what did those who said what they said at the time of a confession mean, but how does the church as an entity, how does the church as a body, as a communion, understand those confessions? Because not only does the church confess together what the Scriptures mean, but the church interprets its own confessions. It interprets the Scriptures in the confessions, and then it interprets the confessions. And we call that interpretation of the confessions together animus imponentus, the mind of the imposing body. And so I treat briefly, and I think Warfield actually in his treatment of this has helpfulness, where he talks about how, yes, hypothetical universalism or Amyraldianism may not be explicitly denied, but here are statements, here are expressions in the confession that would militate against that kind of, just again for the listeners, this is a position that is denying definite atonement, not taking a view.
Christ died for all people.
Christ
but doesn't
died for
mean
all,
that it was effective for all.
Right, indiscriminately.
Right.
Not that it will be applied to all,
right,
but it was for all. It's a kind of tension within the Trinity. And when you think of the 5 points, I mean, the Father electing. I mean, we're depraved. Put it in the assembly. Right. At Dort didn't take it in this order, but we're depraved. Thus, God must act, and there's a view, the Father. Christ must die, that's limited atonement. The Holy Spirit must apply, and we believe that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are not at war with each other against who this gets applied to.
Or that Jesus didn't get the memo.
Right.
He's like, ooh, I died for too many people.
I didn't mean to die for all those people, sorry. And the Holy Spirit, well, don't worry, I'm not applying it to them. So,
well, there are other issues about what Christ actually did on the cross, but what we have here certainly is a similar hermeneutical issue, not only with animus imponentus, but how do we read the standards? Do we look at them line by line and say, can I fit a particular odd view in there, or ought we also to read them holistically and in order, because they're also often building a case too.
Right, and you have to, I mean, the preface to the standards start with a sort of encomium to the Synod of Dort. So in other words, this had already been affirmed in the theology of the church, the continental churches at which the British were represented in condemning the Remonstrance and Arminianism, affirmed definite atonement. So here's how we would understand the animus imponentus on that. We would say that the animus imponentus, that the way the church would now read that, we'll just put it real bluntly. Can we imagine that if somebody a candidate came before an OPC presbytery and said, I don't believe in definite atonement, I believe that Jesus died indiscriminately for all mankind, though it's not applied to all. Can we imagine a presbytery that wouldn't have a problem with that?
No, but I can imagine the scenario that would be raised if somebody says, I don't believe that, but I believe the standards allow for that. And that's not a far afield possibility.
Right, but I'm not aware of that having been done among us either, though.
Not in our presbytery.
Right. I'm not aware of that. But I think the church can say, as we take the standards as a whole, that's not the way we read them. And the person can say, well, that's the way I read them. And Hodge has that great discussion that you don't read the standards. You have to take your oaths in the meaning that you honestly know the body that imposes them understands them.
Yeah.
You can't say wink, wink, nod, nod.
Cross my fingers.
You know, I believe with crossed fingers, as some famous person, as a person infamously said. So yeah, I would say here that the animus imponentus has come to be that though there was not what happened in September of 1643, it was not explicitly put that way in the Westminster Confession, that the Westminster Confession in toto very much does affirm the imputation of the active obedience of Christ.